Well, the second season for Star Trek The Next Generation comes to a close on the final 2 episodes that are rather weak, in my opinion. The second to last is the better of the 2. And it has, a basic decent little plot here of a chance of, well, it's basically a war game of sorts, where Riker becomes the opposing captain of the other ship. They go and get this derelict Federation vessel, a design you've seen multiple times before, but nevertheless, it's a cool scene between the ships and all that. And there's this alien guy who's supposed to be this super duper pooper scooper strategist, and he even outfoxes Data in this some sort of game. There's that display of this, but the guy is just an arrogant a-hole of an alien. He's played by an actor you've seen multiple times. Of course, the one thing that comes to mind is he was the psychiatrist in Total Recall who supposedly goes back to get Doug Quaid out of the mind realm. Doesn't end well for him. But anyway, he plays this snooty snob of an alien guy who's just not that impressed with anybody and all that stuff. But nevertheless, Riker forms his team. They take the ship, and the war games are afoot. And Riker actually outfoxes Picard in a maneuver of projecting another ship, a Romulan ship, and it spooks Picard. And he's like, "Oh no!" And they go out, and he says, Riker got me. How well played, number 1, and all that stuff. Little do they know, the real thing would happen not with the Romulans, but the Ferengi would show up. Probably the last time you see the Ferengi as supposed to be this new villainous race, since they couldn't use Klingons anymore. Ultimately, they settle with the Romulans. The Cardassians come and go in that vein, and then, of course, the Borg. But the Ferengi never really measured up. They were much better and just their capitalist, super hyper-capitalist culture and what have you, as displayed. Obviously, some knocks on capitalism in a capitalist entity, which is typical of Hollywood, but nevertheless, it played well, and then eventually you get to Quark in Deep Space Nine, which is probably the pinnacle of the whole thing, and the best character of the race of Ferengi. The best depiction of it. So anyway, they end up being the villains in it, but it's just they show up and they're looking to see if they can steal these ships and whatnot and that sort of thing. So of course it throws Picard off because he thought it was another trick by Riker and that sort of thing. So it plays off well in that sense, but a lot of it is a bit too cutesy. He brings Wesley on board, and of course Wesley comes up with a solution because the ship is pretty bereft of just about everything. So he says, I got to check on my school project, and he goes, beams back to the Enterprise, brings it back, he says, you're cheating. Well, we had to be creative, so I guess it's like a nod to Kirk and the Kobayashi Maru, but yeah, he blatantly cheated. What are the odds that you could beam onto the enemy ship, in this case of the war game being the Enterprise, and steal something from them, go back and use it to repair your ship? The odds are not good, so but nevertheless, that's what they do. And then once again, Riker has to outfox, the Ferengi and whatnot, they say. And then ultimately, after being defeated by the snob alien guy, I'm forgetting his name, Data challenges him again to this weird space chess game, whatever it is, and beats him. And the guy just, he's furious because he just can't stand losing and all that sort of stuff. And everyone has a nice chuckle. And then, what did Data learn? Well, something, I guess. But all in all, it's a fair, fine episode. the final episode of the season, and it's kind of hard to believe you end on this, but it's basically a clip show. They used to do this all the time with shows. I'm pretty sure they did that with Happy Days and stuff. I do remember the Three's Company episode where I guess John Ritter, out of character, walks onto the set and Lucille Ball is there narrating the clips of Three's Company. So they look at past scenes from old episodes, and that's the whole show, rather cheap to do, and that's why you do it. So here, they didn't want to spend any more money. Apparently they'd overspent on some other episodes and that sort of thing, I think. And maybe there was a writer's strike at the time. Or maybe I'm confusing that with something else. But anyway, that sort of thing. So it starts off with this Riker accidentally gets infected. Well, not accidentally. We later learn this plant is able to shoot these, I guess, darts into you. And it's lethal. And it slowly is killing him. And it's one of those things where that's another aspect of science fiction you get a lot in different franchises, entities, what have you, of the bio threat of being exposed to some pathogen of some sort. And it's some weird alien, so God knows what it's going to do, and that sort of thing. But it was just to put him under so that he can dream about the past, and we can show clips from the highlights of William Riker. Now, if I suppose if they had the time or the money or whatever, they could have expanded this to more members of the away team and have them also reminisce their past. But here it was just all Riker, and Jonathan Frakes, he got paid to lay in bed for the episode. And so that's what they did, a brief set, probably repurposed, reused alien world set and that sort of thing. And then Riker gets infected. Geordi checks it out. They beam him up, and the last we'll see Dr. Pulaski has to treat him, and that's about it. It's just a bunch of clips of his past, and then Deanna Troi crying over him and fight Will and all this sort of thing, and it's just, poof, and that's what you end on, huh? Yeah, well, wasn't a whole lot to it. So I guess they learned a lesson. Now, what's the lesson? Well, when you beam down to an alien world and there's all kinds of vegetation that seems harmless enough but could prove to be deadly, you might want to suit up. There's a lot of things about Star Trek. I mean, they got, the transporter, and it can, and this is one of those things, well, they discussed this in this too, about it can clear the pathogens and whatnot. But it couldn't in this instance. It had already was pretty fast acting and bonding itself to Will, so they weren't going to be able to get rid of it that way. But nevertheless, to just go tromping through this swampy jungle place that they were in, you needed a lot more protective clothing, because their faces are exposed, their hands are exposed, no gloves, and even when they said, hey, we got to go and find what did this to Riker, and they go back and they find, well, what happened, they get one of those little alien dart things that comes out of this plant, and barehanded. You almost infected yourself with the same thing. So it was a bit of a rush job of a show, but a lot of away teams take that risk through all the different iterations of Trek, and I'm like, and if they beam onto a ship that doesn't have life support, or a gas planet that has no oxygen, they'll think, oh yeah, we're going to need a suit, but it's got air, so they beam down and figure it's fine. That's not gonna, no. But again, at least they have the transporter that usually can filter nasty stuff out. But didn't work this time, did it? So maybe that'd be a lesson to you. It won't be a lesson. No. But anyway, pretty weekend. A very this lazy close for a season. It's rather surprising in that regard. But then again, I guess, budget concerns and whatnot. And they say, hey, I know, let's do the clip show. So they did a clip show.